everyone has like a set emotions. We have a set connection. We feel happiness, we feel sadness, we feel this emotion. It's there somewhere, you know. In that situation, I guess I would feel this certain way, and now I have to show it through a hug.
We all have moments like that where people are two-dimensional because of whatever headspace you're in, but then something can change on it, you know. And I try and think, you never know, you know, what's going on with people. It's, you know, it's that kind of thing, kind of cliche, but like, it's really true.
This weird, complicated underlying feeling that you have that is like just the oddity of, if you're lucky enough to have siblings that you're still in touch with to some degree, it's like, it's very bizarre to have to grow up and to grow apart and but to have this relationship with someone who you knew in this capacity. I find it very heartbreaking.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
The Adults is a wonderful film written and directed by Dustin Guy Defa. When I saw it, I felt compelled to talk to each of its 3 stars, Sophia Lillis, Hannah Gross, and Michael Cera. The Tribeca Film Festival brought them to New York City in June, a few weeks before the start of the SAG-AFTRA strike. I sat down with them separately in various rooms in the New York Edition Hotel to talk about the work. Sophia Lillis.
The thing that was so funny about acting is that it's basically trying to have you convince yourself you're a different person. Yeah. And sometimes it's not always that. It's always like, either way, either you convince yourself or not. And towards the end, the result is you have to convince the audience. And usually when people think, in order to convince the audience, you have to convince yourself you're this person. And people either go extremely method, you know, and other people don't. Other people, you know, use another practical way of like, at least if I do this one thing, it'll seem like I'm doing this thing, you know. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
As for me, I feel like it's still changing. I feel like with every single job, it's always going to be something different. And when I first get a script, you know, I see the character that I'm going to play and see what I need to be doing. And, you know, I think of different things, kind of like, it's almost like levels, you know. It's like, well, first off, who is this person? And what scenario, you know, what situation are they in, and what are their relationships with other people, and how can I relate to this in some ways? You know, it's a big relating thing, because that's the easiest you can to, you know, believing you're this thing is if you had that experience prior. And in order to make it believable, which, you know, it gets a little bit harder the more extreme the situation is and more out of touch it is. And so, for instance, as of this character, Maggie, it's something that I can actually relate to in a lot of ways, because I have siblings. You know, I have a twin brother, and I'm technically the youngest by a minute, but still. And although it's not quite the relationship I have with these people, there are moments where I can really take from my own experience and put it into the character.
Hannah Gross.
I think something that I'm like not learning, but just am accepting rather, is that I do have to have a somewhat strict relationship to my physicality before starting anything. If I don't feel, if I haven't moved my body in a long time, then I'll be in a really bad place to start anything. Yeah, it's very, I think, accepting the fact that I feel that tension and stress and anxiety and shit I exhibit like extremely physically. And so in order to work around that, I have to be, I have to like prepare prepare the body.
The body is kind of your way in then.
Totally.
And do you take into account this person's body that you're playing? Do you know what I mean? Like how she carries herself? Do you need to start to do that, or do you need to do this thing to your own body to make yourself malleable to that before you take into consideration her body?
Yeah, I think starting there. I think and it's still something I don't feel like as though I feel reluctant to speak to it because I don't feel as though it's become something that I have mastered or come close to. It's something that I'm like learning, but I don't feel as though like I can speak to it because I don't feel like I 100% exhibit it. But definitely, the body's the way in order to feel like, because that's where everything happens. I think I can't speak to it because I know that I still like get in the way of myself more often than not. And I went to acting school, to theater school, and I've talked about this with a lot of people, and it's such an individualistic enterprise, so the idea of developing a training method is useful for some and not for others. I think what I started in was kind of detrimental because it was a very cerebral approach. And
when did you realize that this was detrimental?
I think, I became disillusioned with everything in the second year of theater school. Actually, probably pretty immediately. Yeah.
And then there was a bunch of like just kind of suffering, I guess, right? Through it.
I loved school. I took a semester off school. I studied at NYU, and they have different training studios within the school. I don't know how many there are now, like 5. I took a semester of school and then wasn't sure what I was going to do, and then decided to keep going with theater, but transferred to the experimental theater wing, which was, that opened my world up to not just it was very important for me, and that's the, NYU being a colossal monstrosity that it is. It feels somewhat embarrassing that that's where I began, but through the experimental theater wing it made me understand it introduced me to a world of performance and art that I just had no exposure to before.
Michael Cera.
Because you're kind of just, at least I am kind of, called upon to do various kinds of work. Some things might be really kind of underdeveloped or very kind of like with a certain kind of frivolity. And then there's things that are kind of, deeper or have simmered in a different way, or a play, things that have really feel kind of lived in or sort of tried. And so I don't find like that a uniform approach really would be useful to me. And I think for me, I'm a very collaborative person, and quite a dependent kind of actor, dependent on the people I'm working with, the director, other actors. So I go in and kind of see what's coming from everybody else and what's cooking and what we're kind of cooking together. And then there's like your private work. But for a lot of my process, I think happens kind of without me knowing it, actually. Reading it and a lot of things developing in your mind. I do kind of find myself planning certain things out, certain moments. Like, I could do it this way. But it's sort of maybe a bit of a safety net. More than anything, like if all else fails, I can kind of try and aim for this thing this version of it that's in my head. But I don't want to get married to anything before showing up and not be open to what's happening and to what feels right in the moment and with the other people. So that I guess that's kind of come over time, that like awareness of that, of not trying to lock it, because I think I really locked things when I was younger out of, I started when I was young. So when you're a kid, it's a big fear of failure and you just want to show up and do the job. You want to kind of like make sure you do, you justify why they hired you, why you got the part. You know, you like try really hard to get the part. You jump through hoops, and then you just feel like you have to kind of hit the mark that's been set. Right. And so that's evolved for me kind of over time. You know, but that's where I started from.
And do you think that it's important to not have things set before you see what other people are doing? There's some people that do talk about adding that in, sizing up what other people are doing, but they've done other stuff first. And maybe you're kind of making me think like maybe that kind of building a foundation before you see what other people are doing might be kind of counterproductive, right? I mean, you might want to see.
It depends, I think. It depends really on what you're doing too, because maybe you have a character that is, in a way, like leading the energy of the room or of the scene or of the world or something, and you are kind of the energy that other people are orbiting, and you need to bring that in order for the other, you know, for everything else to exist or fall into its place. So it's kind of very case by case, you know. But a lot of the work that I've done is very, I mean, I'm doing a lot of things that are kind of like based on rapport in a way. And you kind of have to find that with other people. You can't go in with like, this is my side of the road. This is what I'm bringing to the rapport, and you better like fit what you're doing to what I'm doing. You know, it kind of doesn't work. You have to be alive to each other and see what's going on there.
A lot of it also has to do with not just being as realistic as possible, but also who are you working with? As in, what does the director look for in his role in his movie? And for instance, if it's like a Wes Anderson thing, it's not going to be like the most realistic thing ever, because he's focused mostly on like a portrait, you know. It's more of like a where that person is looking, and try to make it as, you know, picturesque as possible. And as for Dungeons and Dragons, it's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be you're playing with, it's more of like physical acting, character acting. It's not a better or worse thing. It's just, you know, that's in that situation, this is what you're given, and you have to kind of put the pieces together, and what are that person is looking for, and so what do I have to accentuate in this role? I've said a lot of things.
This is what we want. We want things said. Are you pulling things from the way you have to work with some of these directors and actually learning from it and actually applying it to the way you work for another director?
I do, yeah. It's funny. Sometimes I feel like I have a very short-term memory, because, you know, I always feel like I work on something and this person's a very specific way. And I'm like, oh, yes, this person works this way. I think I'm learning from that. I can understand how this person works. And I guess moving forward, if I ever have, you know, another director like that, then I'll know really, you know, how to collab with that. And then I do the next one, and it's a completely different director, and I have to like almost mold into a different thing. And it's almost, I wouldn't say a different type of acting, but it's like it's you're trying to fit yourself in a place, you know. You have to look as, you know, natural as possible in this, you know, in this world you're given, in the world that you're trying to create. So it's going to be completely different. They're going to focus on different things, and then I'm like, okay, so that's the right way. Yeah. Right? And then you go working with a different director, and it's and you're like kind of like forget a little bit, like, oh shoot, right, you know.
I'm wondering if certain kind of maybe uncomfortable things you have to do, for instance, for Wes Anderson, I'm just assuming, like if you literally have to just be conscious of the way you're moving or looking, or the precision work, then you can actually surviving that. I'm making this up because I'm not, I'm sure it's not like this. But then you when you work for somebody like Dustin or something like that, that precision work that you were doing, I'm imagining, can actually help you in certain situations there, even though it's a different style, right?
In a way, yeah. I mean, you're right. It's a different style. One main thing about directors, the way they differ from one another, is their objective, is the way they tell a story. They always focus on one thing more than the other. There's no better thing to focus on. It's just how they are. He is a more visual guy, Wes Anderson, so it's like he focuses mostly on the setting, the thing that they're saying in order to make a move it on to the next plot in order to show this one thing, this very symmetrical room, and having this person stand there and talk about this specific thing in order to, it's a very visual, artwork almost. And so it is completely different from Dustin's, because he focuses mostly on relationships. The set doesn't matter. This starts off in this hotel room that looks kind of bland because it was the hotel that we were staying in, and you, for the longest time, you see this room, and it's quiet. There's nothing going on. It's not Wes Anderson's symmetrical, brightly colored room, but the energy just starts right when Michael walks into the room. And that's when you get to see everything. He opens the curtains, he sits down, things start to have movement, and things start to work because of the character, because of his relationships with other people. That's what Dustin focuses on. So I guess I can say I can take a little bit from the Wes thing onto the next, but I don't, in that situation, I don't need to focus on that too much, because that's not what he wants, And it's also very interesting about Wes is that what I've noticed is that he does focus a lot on very exact things, but he also gives a lot to the actor, as in, which I actually didn't know going into it, because I've heard so many stories about him being like, sit there and say this one thing and say it the exact same way and then move on to the next. I'm like, I guess I have to, he has a very specific voice, But he actually wants the actor to have this character and to, despite what he says, to add a little bit of yourself into that, or add a little bit of his character into that. And which is very interesting, and I didn't know this going into it. And I think that in particular is what I'm going to take away and give to and use for other things. And just in case, I am in another situation where it's a very exact thing, to not forget to add myself a little bit into it.
Yes, because that's what makes it's smart. Because that's what makes it that final ingredient of connection with us. We're not going to connect without that. I don't think, as an audience. Yeah. I really don't believe it. How did you get into Dustin's orbit? Do you know where he first saw you, or what? No, I don't.
I don't really know how he knows me indirectly.
So this was just like an audition? You had your audition, or?
I was middle of doing the West thing, and I was in my hotel room, and because of COVID, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, and so I spent a lot of time there. In that room. I have a small role, so I didn't really work often. But because they didn't know when I was going to be, because there's so many people there, they don't know when they're going to do the scene.
Jeez.
That I stayed there the whole time. Not their fault. It's just because of the situation that we were in. And so it's funny. I was spending a lot of time waiting, and I got an email from Michael, actually, or Dustin? Oh, Michael, I think, saying hey, we were just thinking, wondering, this is a script, and, we were wondering if you would like to be a part of it. And this is Dustin's previous stuff, and I watched Person to Person, and it was really funny, because I've been saying this before, but it's just true. I've always wanted to do a movie in New York, and showing New York, because I grew up here, and I always feel like people always have this either very romanticized version of New York, or very gritty and dark and crime ridden, which is not really true. Each part of New York is very different. and I focus mostly on the people in New York because it's also so much history here, and so much has happened, and so many different people are here that, and what he focuses on mostly is relationships and connections between different people. So in Person to Person, you see so many different people living so many different lives, and so seeing that, it was something that I've always wanted to see. So getting to work on that and getting to see also how a lot of those people were not actors, but you can't really tell because he gets something from them, I think, or the way he writes is very natural.
Yeah.
So it's like, God, I can't wait to see how he does it.
Yeah. How did Dustin become aware of you?
Through I Used to Be Darker.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was he always trying to like write something for you?
I don't think so.
Did he write this for you?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
So you're not sure.
I'm pretty sure.
means you're not.
I'm sure.
Really sure.
I think, yeah. I know he wrote it for Michael, and then I think the first iteration of it was like, was one thing, and then the three of us met, Dustin, Michael, and I. This was because he wrote that draft, it was in 2020, with the idea that we'd shoot it that summer, and then that didn't happen because height of COVID, and so then the three of us met over soup outside and in the winter, and
weird, right?
and then from there the script evolved pretty dramatically into what the film is.
And then he added a third.
And then he added it was always three siblings, but the youngest was a brother.
Interesting. Usually a movie tries harder to really make you like these people or to get this, and this one is not doing that, and that's why I appreciate that. Yeah. This is a testament to the way you guys are performing this, and I don't know if Dustin is bringing you closer to this tone or if you're just doing it because that's the way the script is, but it feels like it's not
pandering or something.
That's right, at all, and it's not trying hard to make you realize what these scenes are about. Right. So how was that established? You know?
Well, I think that's like the kind of movie this is, in a way, where it's not, I mean, when you say make you know what the scene is about, it's kind of like, to me, that's indicating something about like story or, story. The scene is about this, and you need to know that piece, it's servicing the movie in that way because it leads to this and it leads to this. But this movie is not unfolding in that way. It's sort of an emotional story. It's sort of a subtextual story about what's happening between them. And what's happening between them under the surface is very mysterious to them as well. And so the mystery of that sort of is what is the, I think, the allure or the intrigue of this story as it unfolds.
Yeah.
So ambiguity actually is sort of like central to the emotional story of the movie. Yeah, and so I think that's why it kind of works.
Why I like it.
The ambiguity,
Yeah.
It was, really either ingenious or just fortuitous that Dustin, so much of the script are these moments in which like the childhood selves like bubble up through the voices and through glimpses into their song and dance routine. And so having to work on that did more to creating any kind of familial dynamic than what would have happened if we'd like had to sit around the table and just come up with biographical bullet points.
Right. It's kind of forcing you to kind of have to spend time together that you would want to anyway, to kind of like have that at your access.
Yeah, and I think it's also so brilliant because for each of them, with like to varying degrees, but I can just speak for myself. But with Rachel, she's so like her childhood self and her, or at least like the total romanticism she has, is so obvious and so just below the surface. And so just, you know, getting to work on that aspect of her personality and these dynamics was so, yeah, I think that did far more than any kind of, I don't know, table work.
Yeah.
But Dustin and I also talked a lot, like had very, very, very open and vulnerable conversations. And I can't really remember it. I mean, it wasn't so, we talked about, I don't know, they were all like sort of abstract, but speaking to this weird, complicated underlying feeling that you have that is like just the oddity of, if you're lucky enough to have siblings that you're still in touch with to some degree. It's like, it's very bizarre to have to grow up and to grow apart and but to have this relationship with someone who you knew in this capacity.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just like, I find it very heartbreaking.
You have successfully done what I think is almost impossible for funny people to do, which is you presented a character who isn't funny and didn't do it with a wink to us.
Right. He's not funny. No.
But usually when people who are funny play characters who aren't funny, they're winking at us, and that's funny.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean, but I think that's not like the language of this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But even in those little scenes, you could have done that very easily, because it's kind of vulnerable to show, even in a character, that they aren't funny. Yeah. Without that being funny, how unfunny somebody is.
Right. I guess it's very sad to me, really. It's I found it to be tragic, those scenes, and maybe that's why there's no wink in it, because I don't.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I'm not personally laughing at him or at his plight. I find it to be pretty fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I think if it is funny, if it comes off as funny, or I don't know if it does even, but yeah, I mean, it's painful, actually.
Yes.
It's painful.
Sometimes the painfully unfunny things elicit laughter.
Yeah.
But this, I don't think would. I'm curious to see.
I've seen it with an audience.
Yeah.
The more painful moments really don't get a laugh. And it feels like we all want to die.
That's a huge success.
I think you're right. I mean, there's this one moment where, it's a fucking painful moment in the movie. For me, maybe the most painful moment. At the bowling alley when the girls are having a really easy way of joking with each other. And Eric kind of like gets in a way that like feels like competition or something. Or I don't know, just feels like he needs to have a place in the fun.
Yeah.
Needs to. There's like a compulsiveness to it that makes it just impossible for anyone to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's not funny what he's saying. And it almost feels like he's taking a gun and shooting himself in the foot on purpose.
Yeah.
So there's also something violent about it. It's like destroying the fun, destroying the air, and it's very upsetting. And it landed in a very upsetting way in Berlin with the audience. The whole audience was really upset, and so was I watching it. It hurts. That moment's really painful. Yeah.
See, we're laughing about it here, though.
Yeah, I mean, I find that funny as a concept to have a moment like that in a movie, but. And it is, but it really hurts to watch it. Maybe because you can remember times in life where things felt that way, and it's just not fun.
Right. How did this character develop? Were you always in the process with Dustin with this character? It seems like you've been involved with him for a while with this. Yeah, right?
Well, I've been involved as a friend reading it and watching him develop it. I mean, I really can't take any credit for how the character or the script developed. It's all Dustin. I mean. it was just a pleasure to read it, and very exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting to think of getting to play the scenes as he was writing them. And I mean, he's a really, really fantastic writer. But I didn't develop we talked about the...
He was writing it for you, though. That's what
I
someone
think
else
so, yeah. I
told
mean,
me.
he showed it to me very early, and when we talked about it a lot and talked about the movie, and it went through these big, big changes and reconstructive surgery and stuff. And yeah, I think I think he showed it to, many close friends and got feedback and was changing it as he went.
When you have something that long that you get to think about as an actor, how does that benefit you?
I think there's a big benefit, especially to just knowing Dustin as an artist, knowing the tone that I think, having worked with him and knowing kind of what he's like striving for with this, and like the language of the movie. I think yeah. I mean, it's just it's beneficial as an actor to have your head around what language you're working within. Sometimes it's not clear and you have to guess. Mm-hmm. But with Dustin, I felt pretty clear about what we were trying to do.
Mm-hmm. When you realize that you have to your character loves your character's brother, played by Michael Cera, what do you have to do to make that solidified for you? Do you know what I mean? Like the initial thing where you run up to him, we can feel that there, I guess this is what they call acting, but what do you have to spend time with Michael Cera? Do you have to talk about the backstory? Do you have to go through different things of what these people actually went through as siblings?
Yeah, it really depends. Like, I sometimes I think, like, what happens if, hypothetically, I mean, this isn't the case. What if, like, I didn't like Michael Cera?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what would the situation be? And I think the thing is that, one, I've been super lucky with this one, because you've definitely met Michael, and he's just the sweetest man. Like, he's like, it's so down to earth, and like you could talk to him, and so Hannah too. It's just so easy to talk to, and so the rapport came easily. But with those things, it's kind of like it's you use what you're given. Yeah. So because I've had the rehearsal, I used that, and because we got to get to know each other, I got to use that. And if that wasn't the case, then I'd have to pull out what I tried to imagine myself in her situation and try to think of, like, have I ever had that relationship before with someone? Like, haven't seen someone for a while, want this to go well, finally they're here, you want to be happy, you see them for the first time. What would that be like? I think everyone has like a set emotions. We have a set connection with, we feel happiness, we feel sadness, we feel this emotion. It's there somewhere, So kind of mixing it up together, you know, like in that situation, I guess I would feel this certain way. And now I have to show it through a hug. So here we go. Hope this goes through. That kind of thing.
For some reason, I care about you, your character.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for me to.
Right.
So what do you account that for?
I don't know. I think maybe that comes from what's like slowly outlined or fleshed out, like in the movie, between the siblings.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Because there's a lot that's withheld, Yeah. You don't know a lot, but you infer a lot, and I think that's a way to care about people, because, like, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but I've met people that you just meet for one moment in your life or something, in passing on a train or whatever. Like, you don't have to really, and if you just find out one thing about a person, one detail, one sort of thing, it can shift the way you see them so radically.
That's right.
In a moment, and in a way that is emotional, because you see how wrong you were too. Yeah. I find that experience to be very emotional and humbling. And I think that, that sort of happens as you get little like points on the graph, slowly, little bits of clues of information with these people, because maybe you first just see them as one thing, you know, and you slowly come to care about them. Do you ever watch Couples Therapy, that show?
Now, what is this?
They've done 4 seasons, and the structure of each season is that there's 4 couples that it cycles through them, and over the course of like 10 episodes, you see their therapy journey. And
is it a reality show? Or
it's
is it
real.
People? Oh,
and it's incredibly educational, not just as a relationship, like, you know, therapy, but just as the way she works with them as individuals too. It's fascinating, I think, watching therapy, you know. So, but like, it just came to mind because I had a very emotional moment watching the last season where there's this one guy who's a 2-dimensional person at first. He's bad. He's a bad guy. He's like a bad husband. He's terrible. You can't believe how terrible of a communicator he is, how unfair he is, how withholding, how he's just like, you're just like, what a piece of shit, you know? And then there's this one episode where like, and she's frustrated with him. She is like, I can't find him. He's not available to me. Those are the words she uses. And, but she wants to like say to them, I can't work with you. And she even say that. She says, I might not be the right therapist for you. Anyway, but then there's this one episode where there's some kind of breakthrough. And then you as a viewer who have pretty harshly judged this guy, at least I had this experience where I saw him as a human being suddenly, and as like, you know, I just understood like that he's a product of his trappings and his history, and it's very, very emotional because you suddenly feel bad, you know, and you suddenly feel so much, you know, love and for him, and you just want the best for him. Whereas before you were like, leave him, leave him. He's just, now he's trash, you know, throw him away. And yeah, it's pretty powerful.
And it's a good lesson for writers just to see how little it takes for you to have that feeling. So
I mean, he's still very challenging. Like, it doesn't make him, you know, it's still a very challenging guy, but like, there's more, it's more of a whole picture, a holistic picture than was there before. We all have moments like that where people are 2-dimensional because of whatever headspace you're in. But then something can change on it, you know. And I try and think, you never know, you know, what's going on with people. It's, you know, it's that kind of thing, kind of cliche, but like, it's really true.
There is a certain characterization that had to happen here for you. There's a lot of ways you could have presented this person because of how different it is, and it's different for you. This feels very, very different than what we're used to for you.
Maybe because it's kind of a tragic figure. I haven't really played that many people that are as tragic as him. I think that's maybe what you're getting at with the characterization of him.
But did you actually take that into yourself, and are you like kind of letting the tragedy work inside you? Is that what we're seeing? Is that?
I feel for. I mean, I think I can feel that. You know, I can feel tragically about him. And that's what I feel when I read the script. The guy that I play kind of reminds me of a couple people I know. You know, and have certain feelings towards and stuff, and
that has to happen.
And I wonder about them in my heart. You know, sometimes you think about them in your heart, and your heart extends toward those people, and even if you don't understand, and you know, especially actually if you don't understand them, and if you don't quite understand their life and the way they lead their life and the trajectory of their life and the thing that drives them. So there's like, he's a bit of a composite for me of a couple people that was like a way in for me to, you know, to accessing the sympathy I have for him. And that was very alive in the script, you know. It is tragic and he comes across that way. But in a way that I feel for him. I don't think I would want to hang out with him, but but my heart can go out to him. You know.
You found yourself in a
I would play ball. I would crush him in poker. I would be fun to beat him. I love people who get frustrated.
There is a tracking shot in this I didn't notice until the second time. I once tried to do a tracking shot in a film where information had to be revealed, and yet we're tracking. And it was the dumbest idea, like to do this complicated thing and have the actors have to go through all this while we're tracking. And it was in a car. It was done like so guerrilla in front of MoMA. It's like on Fifth Avenue. People.
Wait,
it was dumb.
I need to see this.
It was the dumbest. No, you don't. No, you
Yes.
don't. But I thought of it when I saw this because it's so complicated, the scene, what you're doing. And you're so calm, and it feels so real.
Wait, what
and
are you
I'm like,
talking about?
So you don't even know what this is. Maybe this was AI. Did you guys?
You saw the poster.
It was those people, wasn't it? Those people did it, not you. Why are you even here?
No. They just. I just went in one day. They were like, "We're gonna scan you," and I was like, "That's it."
And then you got a check in the mail.
Yeah. Then this movie came out. Wild ride.
It's like
Micro budget.
It's around the park. It's around the fence.
Oh, in the zoo.
I mean, it's like 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
And you go through a lot of things. Like, I guess by you not even knowing what I'm talking about, it must have been just the apparatus must have not felt like you have to pace this in a certain way, otherwise we're going to get out of focus and all this stuff.
Yeah, no,
right?
I think Tim
That's amazing.
that entire scene on his shoulders.
And what was that? Was that like a Steadicam, or was that it
Yeah.
was just a Steadicam?
Yeah.
This is an advancement. Where an actor can just do a scene and not have to worry about how fast you're going.
Yeah.
Hitting this mark here. Oh, we got to do it again. You went out of focus. Slow down. None of that happened.
I'm sure. You know what? That was one of my first days.
Yeah, wow.
So now I don't remember.
That's
Maybe
a huge
maybe
scene.
I'm romanticizing that.
But you also, there's like so, in that one scene, there's like so much you have to do. Like there's so much that like, and you get mad at him, and it's all in this one tracking shot.
Yeah.
You really weren't there.
I wasn't there. Isn't it amazing?
We did have that was a day where we shot at that zoo, and we had a couple things to do there, but that whole piece of the day, that we'd put aside like a proper amount of time for that. It was one shot, but we gave it enough time to do it enough times.
That's nice.
And try and get it. And it's a lot of pressure on a shot like that. Yeah. I mean, but you know, it's fun too. It's a fun challenge for actors.
So Dustin must have been calm, right? I mean, like the way when I interviewed him about his person to person, he was talking about how that was a difficult shoot because of time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It seemed like there was more time on this.
Yeah. I think we had enough time for sure. That one scene, the tracking shot you're describing was had a particular set of challenges, and I think some of them were to do with the sun coming and going, noises that were coming and going, and practical annoyances like that that are out of your control. But
because it goes on, it's like 4 minutes.
Yeah,
it's just you keep walking,
and then things like focus and things that can make it not perfect where some elements are perfect and some are not. It's a big gamble in that way,
right? And the beautiful thing is that somebody like me can watch that the first time and not even notice.
Yeah, well, that's hopefully how it should be. Yeah, I mean that's what's a great benefit of doing those long, unbroken takes. Hopefully, is not that you're thinking of the like gimmick of it or the high wire act or whatever. You're drawn into it.
How long did you guys have to work on these songs and these dances?
Well, yeah, Dustin, the lyrics were in the script. Michael was the one to put them to music. And the song that he and I sing to Maggie, Michael did early on, and he and I practiced. He very patiently taught me how to sing the song. And then the dance is one of the choreographies, like the one outside, that Michael and Sophia do. That was choreographed by a friend of mine, Justin's, Tally Medell. You know Tally?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then...
Now I want to see it again.
Come tonight.
Yeah, I might. Every time.
It should. Oh,
Yeah.
that makes me happy. Yeah, and then Sophia, and then the last, well, I can't remember. Oh, because the song hadn't been chosen for the party scene. And so that felt like a summer camp activity where the song was chosen, and then Sophia and I had to create the choreography for it, which we like using this Fishkill Hotel conference room as our dance studio.
In a lesser film, these dance sequences would have been a lot less charming, a lot more goofy, and not real as items in these people's pasts. And do you know what I'm talking about? Like, why does that work?
I think it works because it was the choreography was hoisted on to Sophia and I instead of being meticulously mapped out by a professional.
Yeah, that's it.
Other than Tally.
Right.
But also Tally is
she's a child.
But she's she's a clown and she's a genius clown.
Yeah.
And she is super intuitive and understood exactly what we were doing. No, I think it's just it just comes down to just like finding me at my ceiling of choreographical capabilities is that of an 8-year-old child.
Yeah.
So it works.
It's not supposed to be like this elaborate thing.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be good. You know, it's not supposed to be the best ever. It can mess up. It can be, it's something, we haven't done these for a while too. So there's like that extra element, and we're also sort of adults. How is that gonna work out, and there's so many layers to that, and I think the reason why it works so well is we kind of rehearsed them and we didn't have a set thing. We kind of learned like either a week before or like in between, they're all kind of not that, like, we didn't rehearse months in advance, and a lot of it we made ourselves. So we had that element of we are working together to make this, the final dance was something that Hannah and I put together like a few days before actually shooting that, and that was just us hanging out during the weekend, and it feels that way because we kind of recreated it almost as what we would do as a kid. Yeah. And this is what it is, and we're not choreographers. We don't have that under our belts, so it's going to feel kind of rudimentary. It's going to feel kind of clunky because it is, but that's what makes it what that's why we liked it, and that's why we had fun with it, and I think that's why it worked so well. Yeah.
One of them seemed like it was from the band of Outsiders. Did Dustin, was that Dustin's idea to mimic it after that?
Yeah, no, it's funny that it's one of my favorite movies, and I've always wanted to learn that dance. And I think he thought about that as well. And we were together, and we were like, we're thinking of something, maybe adding another, element from a movie or something. And I was like, oh, what about Band of Outsiders? And he was like, actually, I was thinking the same thing. Nice. And so we had found like a band apart, like the, like almost like, I don't know how, but we found an introductory course on like the exact steps. Whoa. And we worked through it together, and it was great.
And the songs, were scripted, like Dustin had written lyrics, but it was really unclear, like, how are we going to sing these? Is there going to be a tune? Yeah. Should we figure it out? Can someone write them? Yeah. And it just kept getting closer and closer, and so I eventually like recorded a demo for a melody that we could all learn as a way to sing them with those lyrics. Yeah.
And you taught the other two?
Yeah, I made a recording. Yeah. And that we could all listen to and try and get, memorized.
It's shocking to me, like, this is really important, like, because it could have been presented in a way where it feels like it's just made up, and it doesn't. So, like, you're lucky. You know,
Yeah.
like you're lucky you guys waited so long and it still feels baked in and
Yeah.
it has a past to it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the songs felt very, very thoughtful. The way he wrote them.
Yeah.
The lyrics were beautiful, I thought.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
What is it that you need in the scenes where something is going on, particularly like in the end, where there is a weightiness, like an emotion that you need to get to? Do you need a certain environment on the set to more easily get there for you?
Definitely.
Was Dustin intuitive about that?
I think he and I found, just by way of like having these kind of, I think for both of us, but certainly for me, these surprising conversations before we started shooting and during too, of without intentionally, and I think that's why it worked, it's just finding the vulnerability underneath the script, and I don't know, the very confusing, murky emotionality of it, which I could not explain very well what it was that I was responding to, but it affected me very deeply, and him too. And I think, we had through conversations, I discovered that that my relationship to the material was a lot deeper than I realized. That was the bottom container that was holding this film for me, these conversations that he and I were having. You know, I think to me it feels like there's never a moment where I feel like, we got it. Yeah, there's always going to be a discrepancy between what you think about what your preconception of how something is going to be, or what you want to convey, and then what happens. And the most important thing for me is to feel in those moments in which there's a rawness that is asked for, to feel as though you're not alone. And so to have that Dustin and I had these conversations beforehand leading up to it was really crucial. And then to be able to ask him on the day to like be there with me, instead of just in my own mind thinking of him as watching the scene, but to feel like someone's there experiencing it alongside you.
Yes.
That's what allows for.
And we need to hear this. All directors need to hear this. Even if you don't have that kind of thing that you and Dustin had, where he was having these deep conversations, it still is this idea of not just watching on a monitor, but being there, that's going to pull something out, right? That's going to make it feel safe to do that or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's this safety in it, and just something. I think it's just a human experience that things feel deeper when they're shared. Yeah. It was a new experience for me, and it solidified that very the infantile aspect of being an actor, where you just don't want to feel alone.
Thank you to Sophia Lillis, Hannah Gross, and Michael Cera. The Adults opens in select cities across the U.S. on August 18th. Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.